Okay. My no noise case, this meeting is now being streamed live on YouTube. All right, let me call the case for the record and have each individual that's present either be identify themselves or be identified for the record. This is P-37163. This is in the estate of Robert Bruce Mullin. Let me have an announcement from the attorneys, please.
Your Honor, Ryan Solis for the applicant, Mrs. Jamie Brown.
Good afternoon. Abel Garza, as the attorney ad litem, Your Honor, for the unknown heirs of the estate.
Mr. Solis, you want to introduce your witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. We've got Mrs. Lee Rothman. Ma'am, if you could state your name for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Lee Rothman.
I'm not starting testimony yet.
Okay, and then we've also got Mr. Thomas Swanston, Jr., Judge.
Okay, and Ms. Brown?
And Mrs. Brown, of course, the applicant. Yes, Your Honor.
All right. For the record, Roland Quintanilla, the court reporter for the probate court, is recording these proceedings. Mr. Garza, before we proceed as ad litem, are you satisfied that all the requirements have been fulfilled to finalize what I believe is pending today, an application to determine heirship?
Yes, Your Honor. In addition, yes, Your Honor, everything's been fulfilled. In addition, there's a waiver that the court had advised Mr. Solis for the other possible heir, John Stewart King. And so that's been filed, Your Honor, January 28th, 2021.
Okay, and we have the attorney certificate of service on everyone?
Yes, Your Honor, he filed that back in 2016. I believe he filed his certificate, and then the citation by publication's been done and returned in a publication affidavit.
All right, Mr. Ryan, Mr. Solis, rather, if you'll call your first witness,
yes, Your Honor, I'd like to call, would you prefer me to just start with the two witnesses themselves, or do you want some testimony from Mrs. Brown, Your Honor?
What's your case, however you want to proceed?
Okay, I can go ahead and just get started with the witnesses. I'll call Mrs. Rothman.
All right, Ms. Rothman, good afternoon. I'll ask you to raise your right hand, please. Will you swear or affirm testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mrs. Rothman, could you state your name for the record, please?
My full name is Lee Swanston Rothman.
And Mrs. Rothman, are you familiar with the family history of Mr. Robert Mullin?
I am.
Okay, how do you know Mr. Mullin?
Mr. Mullin was my cousin.
All right. How long did you know Mr. Mullin?
I knew him from when I was born till when I died. So from 1959 until I believe he died in 2015.
Yes. Okay, thank you. To your knowledge, do you know whether or not Mr. Mullin left a will?
I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, Mr. Mullin and I were involved in another estate in 2012, 2013 of a different cousin. And we discussed the fact that, wills are a bit challenging and that this one had some issues with it. But I do not remember whether he said he had one or not.
And do you know whether or not Mr. Mullin was ever married?
He was. I attended his wedding, but I was pretty young. I think I was either in high school or college. I don't remember.
Okay. And his wife was named Miss Susan Jones. Is that correct?
Yes.
And he divorced Miss Jones in 1989. Is that correct?
I don't know. They weren't married very long.
You do know that they divorced, though. Is that correct?
I believe so, but am I going to swear to it? No, I don't know.
And during the marriage to Mrs. Jones, do you know whether or not Mr. Mullin had any children with her?
No, he did not have any children.
Okay. Aside from Mrs. Jones, do you know whether or not Mr. Mullin had any children with anybody else?
Not that I'm aware of.
Do you know whether or not Mr. Mullin adopted any children?
Not that I'm aware of.
And aside from Mrs. Jamie Brown and her brother John Stewart King, are you aware of any nieces or nephews that Mr. Mullin had?
No, that's it. He had two sisters. One is Jamie and John's mother, and then the other one had no children.
Okay. And neither of them are living, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And then also Mr. Mullin's parents, neither of them are living as well. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. I pass the witness, Your Honor.
Yes.
Yes, good afternoon, Ms. Rothman. We spoke a few times on this matter, correct?
Yes.
Regarding how your relationship was to Robert Bruce Mullin.
Yes.
Was that his full name?
Yes. And I sent you an email with kind of our history of how we're all related.
Okay, yes. But as you already stated, his parents were deceased.
Yes, I believe they were born in the 1920s. So yes.
And then his sisters were his siblings. Were who? What were their names?
His one of his sisters, Jamie, and John's mother was Elizabeth Ann Mullin, who we called Peggy. I think that's right. Maybe, no, I'm sorry. It was Margaret. We call her Peggy, so it's kind of hard for me. It was Margaret Lee Mullin.
Okay.
And then his other sister we called Bunny. And she was Ruth Ann Mullin.
Okay.
They all had nicknames, so that's what I remember. Sorry.
Yeah. And now Ruth Mullin is deceased.
Yes.
Did she have any children?
No, she never married, had no children.
And now the sister that's named, is her name correct? Margaret King?
Yes, she was married.
And
Yes.
she's deceased,
Yes.
correct?
Correct.
And now her children are Jamie Brown, who's the applicant here, correct?
Yes.
And John Stewart King.
Yes, I didn't know his middle name, but yes.
And now, did she have, I'm sorry, did Margaret King have any other children born or adopted?
No.
And they were the only two siblings of the deceased, Robert.
Correct.
And, okay. Did he ever, now you already stated that he didn't have any children from the marriage of Susan Jones. Did he ever adopt any children?
No.
And when was the last time? I know he died in May 13, 2015. When was the last time you ever spoke to him, communication or email, phone?
We corresponded via email and talking in 2013. I don't remember exactly. It was kind of pertaining to that other estate. And then I sent him an email, I think in 2014. I'm not sure. I don't think he ever responded. He was on oil rigs, so I think they have
Right.
email on oil rigs, but he just wasn't a big communicator. So to answer your question, it would have been, when I actually talked to him, it would have been in 2013.
Okay. And did he ever talk about his marriage life, or that he was divorced?
No.
Okay. And I know let's see, the death certificate states he died here in McAllen, Hidalgo County, Texas. Is that correct?
You asking me?
Yes, you're the witness. Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't know where in Texas he was. I know he was in Texas because he was working oil rigs in Texas.
Okay. And now, and he was single at the time of his death, to your
Yes.
knowledge?
Yes.
Okay. And he left no will, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, I'm not aware of a will.
Okay. I'll pass the witness, Your Honor. I have no further questions of Ms. Rothman.
Mr. Garza, does the death certificate reflect his marital status as single? Is that?
That's what Mr. Solis and I in our communication, Your Honor, he advised me, and I think I saw it in some of the filings as well.
It
Okay,
reflects him as being divorced, Your Honor.
the death certificate?
Yes, Your Honor.
I don't believe the death certificate's on file, is it, Mr. Ryan?
I believe it is, Your Honor. It should be. But yes, Your Honor, it does reflect that he was indeed divorced.
Okay, and you're going on the death certificate saying that did you actually get a copy of the divorce decree?
I'm sorry, Your Honor?
Do you actually have a copy of the divorce decree?
I don't have a copy of the divorce decree, Your Honor. I'm going off of the death certificate and the representations by Mrs. Brown, her brother, and the other family members.
Okay, and the informant on the death certificate, who is the informant on it?
It was certified by Homer Hossel. The informant was Jamie Lynn Brown, Your Honor.
Okay, call your next witness, please.
Thank you, Judge. Yes, sir. Your Honor, I'd like to call Mr. Thomas Swanson Jr., please.
All right, Mr. Swanson, I'll ask you to raise your right hand, please, sir. Will you swear or affirm testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Go ahead, Mr. Ryan.
Thank you, sir. Could you state your name for the record, please?
Sure. It's Tom Swanston Jr.
And Mr. Swanson, are you familiar with the family history of Mr. Robert Mullin?
Yes.
Okay. How is it that you know Mr. Mullin or knew Mr. Mullin?
So Bruce was my first cousin. We were about the same age.
Okay.
Families hung out.
Safe to say you knew him most of your life?
Yep. Whole life.
Okay. And to your knowledge, are you aware whether or not Mr. Mullin left a will?
No.
Okay. Now, do you know whether or not Mr. Mullin was ever married?
Well, he was married to Susan, like you guys had talked about.
Okay. And do you know whether or not he and Susan were divorced?
They were divorced. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Do you know whether or not Mr. Mullin ever had any children?
No, he didn't ever had any children.
Okay. Do you know whether or not Mr. Mullin ever adopted any children?
No, never adopted.
Okay. And are you aware that Mr. Mullin's both of his sisters have passed on?
Yep.
Okay.
Both Peggy and Buddy.
All right. As well as Mr. Mullin's parents as well. They too are deceased. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And his two sisters never had any children. Is that correct?
No. One did. Bunny didn't. Peggy did.
Okay. What happened to Peggy's child?
Well, right. They're on the call here. So I hope they're still alive.
Jamie Brown.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, that was a horrible question. Aside from Miss Jamie Brown and her brother, Mr. John Stewart, King. Are you aware of any other nephews that Mr.
No.
That Mr. Mullin?
No. No.
Thank you. All right. I pass the witness, Your Honor.
Mr. Garza.
Mr. Swanston, good afternoon, sir.
Hey, sir, how you doing?
Fine. We spoke also a few days ago, correct?
Yes, we did.
And you told me, as you stated, your relationship to the deceased, that y'all were first cousins.
That's right.
It was on the maternal, correct? Because you told
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
mothers were sisters.
That's right.
Okay. And you've heard the testimony of Ms. Rothman, who's your sister, correct?
Yes,
Do you agree with all of what she's had to say stated?
I do. I think she was pretty spot on.
Okay, and to your knowledge, did he have a surviving spouse at the time of his death?
No. No.
And you stated that you know for sure that he was divorced. How do you know this? Did he say it himself or somebody else to you?
No, he did. He said it that they were getting divorced. As I mentioned, Bruce had some serious health issues, and their marriage was really brief. It just didn't work out, and he told me that they were getting divorced.
Okay. And when was that about the year, if you know?
I don't know. Probably sometime in the mid '80s. They had some difficulty, and for a couple of years, and I don't know, 85, 86, something like that, maybe.
Okay, sir. And you were pretty close to your cousin, weren't you? Told me you attended the wedding, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
Attended the wedding, danced, drank.
Okay. And to your knowledge, did he leave any children either born to or by adoption?
No, neither one.
And you restated that, or I asked you whether he had a will.
I don't know that he had a will. I would, knowing Bruce, I would guess he didn't. Yeah, I don't know, but
Okay.
it would surprise me if he did.
Okay, sir. No further questions. Thank you, sir.
Call your next witness, Mr. Solis.
Your Honor, I'll call Ms. Jamie Brown.
All right, Ms. Brown, I'll ask you to raise your right hand, please. Will you swear or affirm testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes,
Go ahead.
Ma'am, could you state your name for the record?
Jamie Lynn Brown.
And Jamie and Ms. Brown, I'm sorry, you are aware that your uncle, Mr. Robert Bruce Mullin, died without a will on or about May 13th of 2015 in McAllen, Texas?
Yes,
All right. An administration has been requested and that has been granted by the court previously. Is that correct?
yes,
With regard to the heirs of Mr. Brown, Mr. Mullin, it is your understanding that there are only two surviving heirs, both you and your brother, John Stewart King. Is that correct?
yes,
Okay. At the time of Mr. Brown's, at the time of Mr. Mullin's passing, he owned property. Is that correct?
yes,
And as per our inventory that we've submitted, it's roughly in the amount of about $273,000. Does that sound about right?
yes.
Okay. And again, I'll ask you, do you know whether or not your uncle ever had any children, either born or adopted?
To my knowledge, no, he never had any.
Okay. And aside from the marriage that we discussed with Mrs. Susan Jones, are you aware of any other marriages entered into by Mr. Mullin?
No additional marriages, no.
Okay, I pass the witness, Your Honor.
Mr. Garza.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Brown.
Good afternoon.
Your relationship to the deceased and his full name?
He was my uncle, Robert Bruce Mullin.
Okay, was he the maternal uncle?
Yes, my mother's brother.
And the date that he died was May 13, 2015 in McAllen, Hidalgo County, Texas. Is that right?
Yes,
And his status, single or married at that time?
he was single.
And did he ever mention to you about the divorce from a person by the name of Susan Jones? Was that her name to your knowledge?
Yes. Growing up, yeah, it was always talked about that they were divorced because he moved in with my grandmother when they got divorced.
Okay, and when was that, if you know?
88, 89.
And did the deceased ever have any children, either born to marriages or outside marriage or adoption?
No,
And you would know, correct?
no. I would hope I would know.
Okay, and now his family were his siblings. Margaret King, was that her full name?
Margaret Lee King.
And that was your mother?
Yes.
And okay, and who were her children?
Myself and my brother, John Stewart King.
Any other children born to or adopted?
No.
Okay, who were the other siblings of Robert?
Ruth Ann Mullin.
And did she ever have any children born
No.
to or adopted?
No, no, she did not.
Okay, and any other siblings of your uncle?
No.
And to your knowledge, did he leave a will?
Not that we could find. No.
Okay, and did he have a surviving spouse at the time of his death? I might have asked you already, I'm sorry.
No, he did not.
Okay, I'll pass a witness, Your Honor. No other questions.
No questions for Mrs. Brown.
Does the applicant rest?
Yes, Your Honor.
Both sides rest and close?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes,
Okay. Do you have a proposed judgment, Mr. Solis, that you're ready to talk to the court?
Your Honor, I have that. I was just working on that right now. I'll be filing that here with the court probably in the next 15 minutes or so.
Okay, would you run it through Mr. Garza, and if y'all can exchange some signature, that would be helpful.
Absolutely, Your Honor.
It essentially will say half and half, correct?
I'm sorry?
The judgment will essentially say half and half.
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, split evenly between the two siblings.
Jamie Lynn Brown, is that correct, ma'am? That's
Yes.
L-Y-N.
Yes, just one in.
And Jamie is Jaimee.
Yes.
And your address is 1409 Hackensack Road.
Actually, it's changed. We moved. So,
Okay. You want to give us for the record so that can be reflected in the judgment?
absolutely. So it's 5201 Chipping, Chipping Lane, still Virginia Beach, Virginia. And it's 23455.
Okay. And your brother's full name is John Stewart King.
Yes.
His address still 732 Luther Street, Chesapeake, Virginia,
Yes.
2320.
Yes.
Ms. Brown, I'm so sorry. This case has had somewhat of a storied history. There's blank spots in the history of the case that have kind of extended the time for this procedure. I had hoped that your brother, John Stewart King, would be a participant in this hearing, because a lot of this has to do with if both of you are in agreement, there's an easy way to get this done. And if there's not an agreement, then whoever applies essentially gets authority. And so that was one of the things that has created some confusion in this case. Do you know why is he kind of, do you know why he wouldn't take the opportunity to participate in this hearing?
He pretty much leaves all that kind of stuff to me to handle. And he also works nights as a driver, so he sleeps during the day and he works at night.
Okay, here's the, you're going to wind up with a judgment declaring heirship, Mr. Solis, that will declare who the heirs are. The continuing problem we have is that, first of all, this was originally granted as a dependent administration 6 years ago or 5 years ago, probably.
Yes, Your Honor.
And we don't have any accounting that detail what Mrs. Jamie Brown has done under the authority granted to her 5 years ago. It may be that she has not done anything other than gather the assets, in which case you can just say in an accounting form, we started with this inventory and we still have it. If not, you have to account for a difference between what you started with and what you have right now. So the one problem. The second problem is that your inventory filed in 2016, I believe, list Virginia property, real property. Well, it's a condominium, which I assume is real property in Texas and in Virginia. That may or may not be the case. Certainly in Texas it would be. And that inventory was approved inadvertently or by mistake because I don't have jurisdiction of real property in Virginia. Although he died in Texas, we're responsible to take care of all his assets, personal assets and real property in Texas. But I don't have jurisdiction. So you need to amend your inventory. I have to do an order disapproving your inventory and you have to amend it to exclude the Virginia property.
No problem, Judge.
I don't know. This kind of died for a while. I think you even withdrew. I don't know what you're shooting to get done now. Are you trying, let me ask you a specific question. Are you trying to sell the Virginia property? Ms. Brown?
Oh, sorry. Eventually, but right now it's vacant right now because we can't rent it out and obviously we can't sell it right now.
Okay. You might have been yeah, that's a good one. Whether you would have authority. You would not have authority to sell it under my letters that I granted to you. So I think probably you didn't have authority to rent it either. So I'm going to have to disapprove the inventory, although it was approved 4 or 5 years ago. But all that's wrong that I can tell is that you included the Virginia property.
That's fine,
And
Your Honor.
I want Virginia or any title company in Virginia or real estate people to know that Virginia property is not in our inventory, that anything that I have done or that we have done in Texas has any authority, extends any authority to Ms. Brown. So I need to disapprove the inventory. I need to review your accounting and I need to sign the judgment declaring heirship.
No problem.
This judgment declaring heirship may help you with the personal assets. It kind of depends what you're trying to do with the estate, but in order for everything to be straight, you got to file a new inventory. You got to do an accounting. I will sign the judgment declaring heirship for whatever purpose you may be able to use that. But we're not there, unfortunately.
Okay.
That's fine, Judge.
Okay.
Not a problem. We'll get that squared away, Judge. Thank you so much.
Mr. Garza, you're the second ad item. I'm sorry that someone would have to duplicate the payment, but have you been paid?
Yes, Your Honor, Mr. Solis took care of me.
Okay, Mr. Solis, would that conclude everything we need to take care of today?
For today, Your Honor, yes. That concludes our business before the court.
Please be sure and reflect the new address for Ms. Brown. I'll sign the judgment as soon as I have it in my hands. I'm going to do an order disapproving your inventory, and I'll wait for your filing.
I'll submit the amended one, Your Honor.
If you file stuff, you need to file it with the court, obviously, but if you'll favor me with a copy, they may or may not notify me.
Absolutely. I'll definitely do that, Judge.
Do that. Rothman and Mr. Swanson, I want to express my gratitude to you for helping Ms. Brown. This has been a while. I bet you're surprised that this thing is still lingering. Your cousin's issues are still lingering, but if you don't help us, we couldn't do this today. So you moved the ball quite a
Yes.
bit. We're not there yet, but thank you. This is a big part of it.
Happy to do it.
You all have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.